Okay, so welcome to the third meeting of SAGA. Great to see you all back from spring break. Let's get this ball rolling. I'll start with VP of Social.
Okay, so we were just discussing Sunday we have on the calendar like a dinner. But it seems like people are interested in buying eggs. So if you're interested in doing that, we're figuring out location and we'll be sending something out with the location information. And if we do the dinner part of it, just feel free to bring a food item.
Awesome.
And reminder, don't forget your secret towels.
Is that everything? VP of Professional Development, do we have a winner? Or?
Yeah. Okay, on to that in just a few updates. If you're checking your calendar, I updated it at the beginning of the month, so there should be plenty of events to take part in for professional development. And if you participate in any of them, they should cover personal and ethical foundations, law, policy, and governance, and social justice and inclusion competencies this month, as I was looking through. So if you need to hit those areas, we have Amber right after this. So let's have some great conversation and remember to be professional and respectful. In case the conversation gets tense, that could be a good thing. It could be a great conversation, but we just have to be respectful. And then we have Dr. Griffin on April 8th. She'll be coming to talk to us and covering competency, but I can't remember which the two we talked about, human resources and then student development. So one of those. Okay. What other updates do I have for you? We did trivia question today, and that covered ethics. And no, it didn't. It covered values and philosophy and history. Let's see who we have. John Nicholson, got it right.
Woo.
All right, so we get the $5 Starbucks card, and I'm just going to go over the answers just in case we didn't get it right. But which of the following is a foundational outcome for the NASPA competency of values, philosophy, and history? And it would be able to mold the principles of the profession and accept the same from colleagues and supervisors. So we covered a little bit of values, philosophy, and history. Okay, congrats, John. Here's your Starbucks card.
Nice.
And
I got snagged.
that is all I had. Thank you.
Thank you. VP of Programming.
Sorry. So we're gonna still do the video, but we're gonna add things to it. So it's gonna be more of like the GA experience. So I'm gonna try to get footage of like our HESA ceremony, and I'm still gonna come around to you guys, but obviously I'm really busy. I know we're all busy, that's not really an excuse, but on my day off, I do have other things that I have to do, so that's why I haven't gotten to it, but it will get done so that way we can roll it out for next year.
Good.
That's all I got.
Okay, awesome. VP of Communications.
So two things. So we have been in conversations back and forth in the officer meetings, talking about how we can engage other graduate students here at Fort Hays and how we can build kind of a larger community than just our cohort. Because I think a lot of the time we are with the same people all day, right? So we get to class, we hang out, we have GA positions. And so it's nice to be able to experience people from different programs. And so we've asked people, and so we're starting to ask people to, if you know other graduates from different programs, if you would get their input on whether or not they would like to do that, and then get back with me or get back with John, and let us know so that we can move forward and say, we'd like to send an email, and we have one written for Dr. Crowley, but we want more buy-in than just the HESA program. So.
Jared, are you going to develop the email that you want us to send to the graduate students who are interested?
Yes, if you want it, I can forward it to you. I have it, so I can forward it to whoever wants it so that you can forward it to people you know. I think personal conversation, one-on-one quick talks is probably an easy way, and that's been useful for me. But for people who want to send stuff to people that they know and say, hey, would you be interested in getting some sort of documentation, that would work really well too. So That's one. Other thing is we're looking at all the programs that we've done so far, and we're putting together a task force committee, something related to that, so that we can look at the programs that we've done and figure out if there's any way that we can improve them. So if you want to be a part of that, put that as part of some sort of competency. You can do that too. So that's it.
Also take a moment. Thank you, Jared and others on the committee for putting together allocations, which we do have funding for next year. So that's exciting. First year and we did it. Yes. Brittany, did you want to take a moment and tell us about a service event?
Yeah, so I sent out a message about, let me make sure it's the right date, April 30th. The place where I live, Bethesda Place, they host a garden day event every year. So they always need a lot of help cleaning up the property and getting stuff together, and then also working with the men as you do those things. And so it'd be a really fun day. It would be April 30th, so right after Tiger Stripe. So those of you that are involved in that, it would happen after that. Yeah, and so I haven't planned the whole thing out. I was just kind of trying to figure out if people would be interested in something like that. If not, no problem. You can just take it off the calendar. But would that be something that people would be interested in?
And as a student organization, we have to document 10 hours of community service. 10, right?
20 hours.
20 hours
As an
of
organization.
service as an organization. So this is a great opportunity for us to get those 20 service hours.
Put them on calculator.
Yeah, I was thinking around 1:30 to 4:30 or 5, and you guys can come however much you can and leave when you want, but that was just my idea. So I'll go ahead and move forward with that, it sounds like. Okay. And then I had another opportunity to be involved, kind of similar. I'm trying to put together a booklet for new incoming HESA students that talk about maybe some expectations so that when they come in, they'll have an idea of NASPA competencies, the foundation, that type of thing, instead of kind of figuring it out along the way. And I'd like to kind of get your guys' perspective on things that new HESA students should know and things to put in the booklet. So we're kind of trying to figure out a time for that. I had it planned for April 1st, which would have been
Next Friday.
next Friday. But it sounds like quite a few of you guys will be out of town that day. So I'm looking at a different day possibly. So I'll let you know about that as well. That's all I got.
Thank you. Past president.
I'm not really sure where we're at on the timeline. I talked about it in the officer group, but I don't know that I've talked about it here. As the NASPA GAP, we had an opportunity to participate in a really kind of different online webinar panel with Eric Stoller, who's kind of a higher ed technology guru. So we were one of 2 campuses in the entire nation to join in on that, and that was John G., Holly, and I that ended up being a part of that panel discussion. So the other thing is that all of the graduating class from last year basically has said yes to doing a online kind of Google Hangout with all of us to talk about their transitioning into their professional role. Since it is more geared towards the second years, I wanted to ask, like, on nights that we don't have class, because that would be Monday, Thursday, and Friday, which night works best so that we can proceed and schedule something here in the next 2 weeks or so with them. Monday is what I'm hearing over here.
Well, no,
It would be an evening thing because they work during the day, of course. So
Monday next week.
Monday, Res Life crew.
I have meetings.
Come. Okay. Okay. That's about all I've got.
Okay, awesome. Thank you. I'm gonna hit it off again with, if you first years in the room, if you're interested in a position, I hope you reach out to somebody, because this is a great opportunity now for you to transition or speak with that individual about what that role looks like, what they've done, and where it's headed. And you can kind of brainstorm together so you're not repeating the same mistakes versus kind of deciding to do it next semester and then they're a little bit further away, so you don't get a chance to kind of shadow them and see what that looks like. So yeah.
Can I say something?
Yeah, go ahead.
So I think that now that there's funding with our organization, there's more opportunity for like Jared's position and my position to do a lot more. And in our last meeting, we brainstormed like what those could potentially be, especially with like Career and Student Affairs Month. So if you're interested in mine, I have ideas. Want to hang out and talk about it?
Yeah, like definitely what Holly said of we have a lot more money to work and use, and we want to make sure that we are going to be using that funding. So it's not going to be like trying to plan things without any money to back it up. And so it's just whatever we want to do, but we want to make sure that we've used the funds that we've been given. So on top of that, like what was said with the community service, definitely like if you're not sure how, please reach out to get that put into TigerLink so we can keep track of that. We were talking about some of the, like your community service events, like what you normally think of work, but other volunteer opportunities such as volunteering at conferences also works. I'm trying to think some of the others that we brainstormed and write down a list.
Stripes for St. Jude. If you didn't record that for another organization, you can record it for ours or other service opportunities on campus that you've been a part of too. So 20 hours total within all members, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Greek Week judging opportunity coming up at the beginning of April too, and that would count towards advising and supporting and others.
I have a question.
Yeah.
I volunteered for like Swipe Out Hunger and a service trip for the Kansas weekend in the fall.
Yeah.
Does that count toward? Okay. So I just need to record it through y'all.
Yeah. So if you're not sure how to go in and do it, feel free to reach out or send me an email. And I would just need like the number of hours and like the contact person. And then obviously who you are, like who's the hours get accredited to. Yep. Thank you. I've been speaking with a professional that I know at another institution, and they recently, well, probably about a month ago now at this point, had someone come in and speak on the topic of residential curriculum. So I threw out the idea at our last officer meeting about having this individual come in and actually present, like not come here, but virtually bring them to Fort Hays and they could present on the topic. It's another area to learn about, especially for those of you who are going on to get jobs elsewhere. Take that knowledge with you, or for us here, we can apply it here and take it with us. It's going to be, their experience is more focused around the residential halls, but the whole curriculum idea is used in other areas, like Patty brought up that they use it with the Access to Success meetings is another curriculum piece. So I'm asking them to, frame that conversation as a very broad piece that we can all take something from. And she's looking at the week of the 28th. So not this week, but next week. I'll send out a when to meet, but just keep in mind to I'll try and find the best times. And hopefully if you can't make it, we can get it recorded so that way you can visit that later. But is there interest in doing that before I schedule something and send out that when to meet? Show of thumbs.
As long as the day works.
Okay. Awesome. So expect a when to meet from me then and fill that out as soon as possible so that way I can work with her on scheduling a time. And that'll be during the day hours. They're on spring break that week, so she's pretty flexible then since she doesn't have meetings with students and stuff like that. Awesome. Thank you. Advisor updates? Awesome. So I guess we'll move into our presenter.
How's everybody doing?
Good. Yeah, Amber, before you get started, I just want to double check. So we are recording the meeting, so that way we can share it with our virtual cohort. Do you have any problems with that being shared or being recorded for our use?
I'm not gonna be able to see you, so I'm not gonna say this after.
That's fine.
All right. So today we're going to talk about privilege perception and how that plays into you being an essay pro. Is everybody okay with that? Awesome. And say, if not now, it'd be a great time to be like, you know what? I got this lunch I want to go eat in this moment. Does everybody have their portable electronic device? Awesome. So let's start off with some basic definitions and some ground rules that we can all agree to. Can we all agree to be open, honest, and fully present? Head nods is good. Yes is no. Like, no, I'm not down for that kind of thing. Is good. Okay. Can we all agree to being respectful of somebody else's experience? Because just because that's not your experience doesn't mean that their experience isn't valid. Great. can we also agree that if something is said that makes you feel some type of way, we can agree to the ouch, oops, I'm sorry. So if something is said that hurts you personally, you can say ouch and give that person the space to like say why they feel some type of way. The person has the opportunity to say, oops, I'm sorry, this is what I really meant is this. Everybody good? Wonderful. So what is privilege? Can you kind of do me a favor and take that off the screen for a second?
No, boy.
Awesome. What's privilege? Guess at it. Also, fun fact for those of you who don't know me, I know most people's names and don't make eye contact with me on purpose because then I'll be like, hey.
I think privilege is when something is given to you and something that you earn or work for, just automatically granted because of who you are.
Okay. Michael, did you have? But you don't have to do. We could just talk to each other. Y'all don't have to do.
Say benefits that a certain person or group may have that other people or groups may not have.
Anything else anybody wants to add?
I don't think that you always ask for the benefits though. Like some people have privilege without, like, I think that it's based on characteristics or traits that you possess as an individual that gives you that advantage, but not all. I think there are different levels of privilege and different types of privilege. So I don't think anyone asks for their different types of privileges.
Interesting. So for the purposes of today's definition, privilege is unearned, unasked for, and sometimes unbeknownst to the person that's holding it. Unearned, unasked for, and sometimes unbeknownst to the person holding it. Who has privilege? Everyone. Everyone has privilege in some way, shape, or form. So now would be a great time to take out your handy dandy mobile devices. Brett and Patty, I didn't send you the link, but I can if you would like to. So what I want you to do is with an open mind, please take the quiz and then we'll talk about your results. I sent it to your email. It's like right before I came up here.
Okay. Thank you.
So they'll be like, I'll have to email and forward you, and you're like, hey, you guys, because it makes me easier, but. There you go. Everybody's still working. So when you start talking, continue to like click through as you need to. We're gonna talk about perception before we continue to talk about privilege. So your perception is how you view something based on your experiences and walk through life. Your values and these experiences help shape the way you look at things. And right now we're going to talk about how you look at this quiz. Remember that BuzzFeed is not the end all be all to tell you what anything is, but I felt like this was a helpful way to like kind of look at it and talk about it differently. What feelings come up as you click through this? So keep going. I just want to, like, if you're not finished, you can be defensive. You feel defensive. Why? You literally woke up like this, or you were born into it like this. So defensive is a feeling. What else? What else are we feeling here? I don't know. Privilege. Privilege.
Yeah, I was kind of surprised at the number of times actually clicking on
Surprised at seeing it.
I think sometimes like it brings up feelings of like past experiences and like, I don't know, it can be really emotional.
Can be emotional. Does anybody feel like they have to like explain themselves as to why they clicked on something? Yeah, sort of, kind of. Do you think this is a fairly interesting representation of the different types of privilege that there are? Are you aware of a lot of the different types of privileges that there are? Shout some out for me.
White.
White privilege is a thing.
Well, can it be race privilege though?
No.
Why?
Privilege has an aspect of access and power and is systematic.
Isn't that
So there is no such
situational?
thing as Black privilege. As a Black person, I have no access and power to deny somebody anything systematically to anyone. Does that make sense?
I think it makes sense, but I don't want to get into it, I guess.
It's okay if you don't agree, but access and power play huge roles.
So can I say ouch to that?
Yes.
Explain why? Because when I was growing up in Atlanta, Black people had the power over my siblings who went to elementary school and middle school. Like, is privilege not situational, given the fact that my sister was one white person on her step team of all Black girls, and because of it, she was treated differently?
So racial prejudice and privilege are not the same thing. So anybody can be racially prejudiced, literally anybody. Racism, not everybody can be, because it comes with access and power systematically.
But based on the systems that you're in,
Because overall, like that's not necessarily your sister's step team is not a system, it's an organization, but literally being bullied isn't necessarily a system of power. Does that make sense? Like that would be like I can be mean to you, Holly. That's not necessarily like me taking away your privilege or oppressing you, because as an individual, I can have certain interactions, but systematically I cannot.
okay, maybe that was a bad example. So like organizational leadership, there's an organization that a certain race, and it doesn't have to be Black or white, it can be Hispanic, a certain race dominates the power or the leadership of that organization. But as an individual who's also passionate about it, like certain races don't have privilege within that organization then?
No, because you're still looking at it based on an individual and not a system. So even if the organization, like it doesn't really matter, Hispanic, Latino, any of it, Asian, it literally does not matter. Systematically, like that one, it's still one organization enacting on somebody, an individual's thing. Does that make sense?
Yeah, when we talk about privilege, is it solely the United States then?
We are solely talking about what it looks like right here.
That's what I wanted to ask. Can you define systematic?
So education, school system. Housing is a system. Workforce is a system.
Education.
Well,
The discussion between you and Holly just is igniting just, some past situations, and I'm just wondering, if we need to move on. But I'm just wondering, back to her example, so that was in the school system. So because one of the questions on here were, have you ever been in a room, or have you ever been the only person of your, so define systematic. I mean, I don't know how to articulate this. I'm having a lot of feelings, and I don't know how to articulate them, because, these different types of privileges, but there's no racial privilege, it's systematic. But there's no Black privilege, and there's no such thing. Okay. Just her example.
but if I'm the only white person
Right.
in the room, then that technically I could answer that question saying that I was. Therefore,
Right.
that is there are
No,
different
but you're
types.
still looking at that situationally and applying it to a broader thing. So like, let me give you an example. While I am literally the only domestic African-American person that works at this institution, that does not mean that that was systematically done. I'm quite often the only Black person in the room very frequently. It could be systematic if you look at the senior leadership team and the people in power and who they want where.
So it is situational, because you just said it
That's
could
what,
be.
yeah, that's what I'm
But
wondering.
what I'm saying is, if you look at the positions that people of color are in. I'm coordinator of diversity affairs. Hector is a multicultural admissions counselor. This is not to say that that is strategic and personal. However, lots of institutions do that systematically because they don't necessarily want a person of color in a different position. Does that make sense?
We can move on. I'm going to choose to disagree, but we can move on.
Awesome. What other types of privileges exist?
Your parents being married.
Parents being married, coming from a two-parent home.
Males.
Male privilege is real. What else?
Christian or religious?
Religious privilege is real.
Sexual orientation.
Cis privilege is real. Heterosexual privilege is real.
Did you say cis?
Cis means same. So I don't identify as a trans woman. I identify as a cis woman. So the sex I was assigned at birth aligns with the socialization of being what a woman is aligns for me. So I'm cis. Able-bodied privilege is a thing. Because while we might not like to walk up to the third floor of where you have the ability to, there is one elevator, and it's in the corner.
Economic privilege.
There is economic privilege. So how does your privilege play into you being an SA Pro? Because it definitely plays on how you look at the world. So how might it play into how you look at your students?
I think one important term is empathy, being able to be, aware and empathetic and, to different people, different personalities, different, populations. People to be aware and be empathetic. We're working on it.
What plays your role in being able to be empathetic? So in one of your student activities, because that's what I can easily make an example out of. One of your students that you be really enthusiastic about everything, and then throughout the semester they kind of start to drop off. And they seem like really tired all the time or even like depressed. What might your perception of what's going on with that student be?
From a student affairs perspective, or
Yes,
from
from
what
a
we
student
think?
affairs, from a student affairs perspective.
There's obviously something wrong.
Okay, but what might you assume is wrong, or what might your perception be of what's wrong?
You probably need background on the student.
Okay,
You might be taking too much on.
they might be doing too much.
I mean, they might have mental health, like they're depressed.
Say that again?
They might be depressed.
They might be.
Not able to make rent.
Because rent is real. Do you ever consider that they might not have eaten in 3 days? Because food insecurity is real, we know that it's very real here. So while like a student might seem tired or withdrawn or whatnot, they might just be hungry and not really comfortable articulating that this is what's wrong. But your perception initially might be like, ooh, maybe you're doing too much. Maybe you should study a little bit more and get a little bit more rest, do some self-care, and not maybe go out as much. Because especially if you see students tired and they're like kind of whining about being tired, but you see those giant X's on their hands, your perception might be a little less empathetic. But because of the privilege that you hold, there are things that are blind to you, or that you might not have thought about beforehand. Like, for instance, I have trans students, and until one of them told me that they literally don't utilize the bathroom, any of the bathrooms on campus, because they are afraid as to what might happen when they choose one, never thought about that. Like, if I have to go to the bathroom, get up and go to the bathroom. I never have to think about what's gonna happen to me in there. There are awkward times where people wanna strike up conversations, like, I'm just trying to wash my hands and go. But I've never had to consider my safety in the bathroom. So, what are some things, thinking about privilege and things that you might not necessarily have to think about, or that our students are going through that you might not ever have to deal with? What are some things that you could potentially do?
To help the specific student, the trans student, or in what context are we
In
asking?
general, how are we helping students as well? Like, you can tell me, you can give me an example of any specific one, but like, what can you potentially do as an SA Pro for your students?
Build those relationships so your students feel comfortable talking about those issues.
Building relationships. Let's take one of each.
Not assume that it's one issue and have them actually talk to you about what it is.
Not make assumptions.
Advocate for them.
Advocate.
Being aware of your resources, not just on campus, but locally.
Being aware.
Encourage.
Encouraging. Make sure you take one of each of the handles that's going around. Are
I have a
you?
question.
What's up?
So like some of the examples are know the resources, encourage, like be supportive. But how, because you don't want to make the assumption, and maybe it's the wrong time, maybe we're not doing how to today, but so my perspective is I build relationships and then I feel comfortable to ask questions. And like events I think is a good example. Like I'm from a low economic background and I couldn't do like a service trip that I wanted to do. And he had built a relationship with me to where he felt comfortable to ask that question. But I've also been told that don't ask questions because they shouldn't have to answer. But if I'm wanting to be helpful, how am I supposed to encourage and be supportive if I don't know what the problem is?
I love that you asked that question. Because of the experiences that you have as an individual. So Holly, if you know that your experience was like, I couldn't go on XYZ trip because of my socioeconomic status. If you have a chance to sit at the table, or you have a friend or a colleague that sits at the table, you can bring that up like, hey, are we thinking about this aspect? So you don't necessarily have to ask the one student because you know this aspect that might be a roadblock. Getting your peers and colleagues to think through some of those policies and procedures so that they are more inclusive. Does that make sense? So
Yeah.
you don't ever have to ask a student in particular. Or like, let's take, y'all have money now to go on conferences and trips and whatnot. But the university doesn't cover your meals. If I'm food insecure or I just paid rent, I'm not gonna be able to feed myself. So what are some, you can think about that from your perspective, or what are some ways that we can as a collective try to make sure that nobody has to feel awkward when we go to dinner because they can't eat. So that's not necessarily a conversation you have to have with somebody, but something that you can think through. So maybe let's not always go to the place where it's gonna be $25 for an appetizer. Let's figure out how we can think things through. So it doesn't always necessarily require a conversation if you're aware of the situation as a whole. Does that make sense? So if we know that stuff is gonna potentially be expensive, then we can be proactive about trying to make sure we're being inclusive instead of reactive. So the first one is 30 alternatives to help you stop using ableist homophobic phrases. This is just a suggestion because there are things that we say as people and that you're gonna hear your students say that just fly out of their mouths. Like one of the things I heard last week was like, it's why they're so bipolar. Well, let's talk about how that's not okay to say. And what it really means to be bipolar and the stigma that you're putting onto it or making light of a situation that might be a real life struggle for someone. That's not what that means. We're being OCD about something. Maybe you're just being like, what you really mean to say is that you're being particular. Because obsessive compulsion is a real thing. You know, I never realized that just encourages lookism and like kind of take this into consideration because it's so ingrained in this nonchalant culture. Yeah, like we'll just flippantly say something, but it's ableist and homophobic or transphobic. The other piece of paper, 25 simple, not easy steps to justice. Those are things that you can do as an individual. So what we're gonna do is kind of go through those one by one. The very first one is think and educate yourself. This does not mean run to the nearest identity that you don't hold, ask somebody who happens to have it, and then make them explain to you everything there is to know about it. That doesn't work. You're marginalizing that person. You're not getting a full perspective of what that is. Amber, what's step number 2?
Listen.
Listen. I'm going to add listen to understand and not respond. Listen to understand and not respond. Because especially if you don't hold the identity of which the person is trying to articulate, you're not really hearing them. You just want to say what you have to say. You're not really hearing them. Michael, what's number 3?
Listen more.
See, number 2. 4,
Refrain from getting defensive.
try really hard not to be, because it's not about you. It's really easy to get defensive because a lot of people want to say, well, that's not me. I didn't do that. I worked really hard. But that has nothing to do with you. It's not personal. Try really hard not to get defensive.
Give the oppressed space to speak their truth and voice their needs.
Reiterate their voices by using your resources to inspire action amongst the dominant group.
So kind of going back to that example we just used of like socioeconomic status. If that person isn't able to be in that space, but you are, uplift that voice so that they have that chance to be heard. Don't speak for, just uplift. Next one.
Listen again.
Listen again. Next.
Challenge and educate other dominant group members.
Yes, and not just when, like it's easy when we're in like a space where we know that everybody agrees with you and it feels comfortable because yes, we all think like this, but when you step out of that box, it's not so easy and it doesn't feel good. But it doesn't make it any easier for the person that you're scared to speak up for. Next one. Act. Do something, please. Next.
Educate yourself more.
There will never be a point where you absolutely know everything there is to know about everything. None. Constant education, lifelong learning is key and so real. Keep going.
Take risks.
Next one.
Assume the consequences for taking the risks.
So a risk might be speak up and somebody didn't like what you had to say. Somebody close to you didn't like what you had to say. They now feel some type of way about you and might stop talking to you. That's a very real situation. And that's gonna hurt, I'm not gonna lie to you, especially if y'all were close. But what you have to consider is if we can only be friends when we agree on something, are we really friends? I love my family dearly. They don't agree with a lot of what I do. It's what happens when you raise me to believe that like I'm not better than anybody else and nobody's better than me, but they didn't expect me to take it this far. Well, stuff happens. So there are some family members that choose not to speak to me because of it. I still love them. We're just not as close as we used to be. It's gonna happen, but you have to get to a point where you're okay with it. It's the next one.
Fail.
Fail. So you're gonna take a risk, you're gonna assume some consequences, and that's gonna suck, and then you might fail. Then what?
Cry if you must, but be wary of derailing the conversation to appease your tears.
I repeat, it's okay to be upset, but it's not about you. Next,
Try again.
try again.
Fail again.
Fail again, because you're not gonna get it right the first couple of times, and that's okay.
Be creative.
Be creative. Because somebody's not always gonna want to hear what you have to say. So if I know that going into this, you're not gonna be as open to it, then I don't have to try to find a way to get you to be open to it without you realizing that's what's even happening. Brittany.
Try again.
Nicole.
Fail again.
More non-derailing tears.
More non-derailing tears. Edith.
Try again, develop your own boundaries.
Is that sorry?
Develop your own boundaries.
Develop your own boundaries.
Achieve small wins.
Small wins. Celebrate victory very quickly.
Engage in accurate self-assessment of the process.
Do it again.
So I can see that there's still some feelings in the room. Y'all are thinking through some stuff. This isn't easy work. Self-work is probably some of the hardest work because you want to believe that you're the most well-intentioned person ever. But sometimes your intentions don't matter. The impact of what you've said or done is farther reaching. Like, it's a great thing to get money from SGA so we can be able to go somewhere. But the reality of what that is and what that looks like when it gets distributed is something different. So as an essay pro, it's great for us to tell our students, like, don't do this, da 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 da. And even for me in this position, like, it's great for me to say, don't be a jerk, bottom line. But I have to do the work constantly. I don't hold a lot of the identities that I advocate for, so I'm constantly having to learn. And it's not somebody else's job who holds those identities to teach me.
So can I ask, how do you learn? Because, like, I myself own my privilege. I am a white male. I'm a part of the majority group. I've taken classes in intercultural communication. I've taken classes in American Indian identity, but still I'm the outside group, so I won't fully ever be able to understand.
Mm-hmm.
But what are ways to educate yourself in a proper time, place, and manner, and those types of things?
I love that you said that I will never fully be able to understand, because no one will. If you don't hold that identity, you will never fully understand what it's like, because you will never have that lived experience. But you can always read blogs, books, whatnot. You can always Google, like, different people to see what they're doing. Because people put out lists. Like, what I love about Melissa Harris Perry, she puts out a syllabus every so often of just things to read on a lot of different identities. I get a lot of information from there. If you utilize your social media, there, depending on who you're following, or look at who's mentioning who, and look them up at what they're doing. I just came back from a conference at my alma mater. I have a new reading list and new people to look up and learn more from. So you just have to pay attention almost. Does that make sense? Be intentional about who you're following and who you're looking for and what information you're trying to find. Know that you do have resources that you can go ask, but make sure that you're not constantly like, I don't necessarily go to GSA meetings because my relationships with my students are very reciprocal. Like, I want y'all to tell me all that there is to know. I do have conversations intentionally where, like, what do you want from me as your advisor or as a pro staff on campus? What do you want me to perpetuate so that everybody knows, so that we're making this a space where you feel comfortable no matter where you're at? You can have those types of conversations and those will always be great. Does that make sense? Was that remotely helpful? So just be intentional about the information you're looking for. Make sure that it's legit information. Wikipedia is never a source. But make sure that it's scholarly work. Does that make sense too? Like, not everybody has an opinion. Your opinion is, while I will never invalidate that, but if it's not backed up with some sort of fact, then that's just how you feel. So make sure that it's scholarly work in somebody's lived experience. Scholarly lived experience. What else? That was a great question. Thank you for it. What else? To help you better understand systems, I want you to look at how things are built, specifically in this country. While some things might not exist, you have to look at the perpetuation of those benefits, which is why privilege exists. And while you might have woke up like this and you were born into something, there's a reason. So I, having a master's degree, have privilege over someone who does not, because I have access to things that they will never have access to. That's still privilege. But if you look at the system, like how school is set up systematically, it's meant for certain people to succeed, starting at K through 12. Because what is your school system based on? Taxes. So if I live in a low income area, my school isn't gonna have that much money, so we're not gonna have the access to the latest and greatest technology. So once I get to college, I'm already behind somebody else who lived in a better area, who had computers, while I might have had the same book that my grandparents had. Does that make sense? Do you see how that's perpetuated? Do y'all have to take history of higher education?
You don't have that course.
You should find a book on it and just check it out. Like, while it sounds extra boring, like I had it when I was in grad school, and my professor was amazing, but it made me look at things differently. Critically, what I'm asking you essentially to do is critically think about the systems in which you live in, that you operate through, that you have to try to navigate. Because while that might not be your experience, while something might seem like an isolated experience, I promise it's not. This session is not to make you feel guilty about anything, because like I said, you woke up like this, and why would you ever feel guilty about who you are? But with these 25 steps, if you feel like something is wrong, or you notice that something is wrong and you want to try to fix this, justice is what love looks like in public. Pick a starting point and do something. If you ever want to talk through some stuff, or get some stuff off your chest, or you just want to vent and not hear me say anything, everybody knows where I'm at. Everybody knows at least where Starbucks is, right? CSI is directly below Starbucks. You can literally, as you walk through the door, my office is right there. Like, if that's I was the door, Denisha is my office. Literally, I'm right there. If I'm not there, leave me a note. I will come back. I will find you. I am absolutely here to be a resource for you. When you graduate, if you have a question, if I don't have the answer, I will try to find it for you. Like Jacob Patrick wanted a book. I didn't have one. And unfortunately, I didn't know anybody that had one. So that wasn't a good example. But if you need something, I will absolutely do what I can to get you what you need. Does that make sense? Awesome. Thank you for spending some time with me. Hopefully you will think about this a little bit more critically going forward. If you would like a service hour opportunity, on April 12th, the Game of Life will be happening in the ballroom. I will give you more details on what that would be if you are interested. If you just want to come and participate in the Game of Life, it would be great and fun. Thank you.
Thank you. Have fun. That's, I don't know.
Are you gonna adjourn? Are we done?
Yeah. Would you like to make a motion?
I don't know. Would you do part all?
Okay, we're adjourned.
All right.
It is student learning and